Hello, welcome to Module 6. Um, you will have completed your draft persuasive essay in Module 5. And so moving on in the overall writing process, we're now moving to the next stage, which is revision. So let's take a look at what you will learn and why you will learn it. First, how to revise written communication with a variety of strategies, and how to use persuasive writing techniques for your specific audience. Why you will learn about it, which is always important to know. To have a range of tools and strategies to help you rethink each part of your essay and revise it thoroughly. To understand how to apply specific persuasive writing techniques to your essay in order to create a more convincing persuasive essay. This is important not only for the revision of the draft for the final essay that you will submit in Module 7, but it's also important as part of your overall writing process that you'll take forward from this course for future courses as well as other writing situations that you may encounter. I think this time it's important to look at a couple of the tips for success. The first one is really important to think about in terms of time management. It says, while your persuasive essay is not due until Module 7, it's a good idea to review the rubric and guidelines now so you are aware of how the essay will be assessed. So part of what we'll do is jump ahead at the end of this video and look at the Module 7 information. Um, Also, it's important that you think about, and this is the last bullet point, although you have 2 weeks to revise, be certain to get started early this week. As soon as you get your instructor feedback uh, returned to you on the draft, be sure that you're taking a look at it and starting a plan for revision. And if at all possible, starting to do some revision this week and not waiting until next week or the last weekend before the Module 7 assignments are due. And as always, the module at a glance gives you step-by-step and path to follow through. Moving to the next page, we have the guide. And the first thing to think about is, of course, why revise? Very few people are able to write a perfect piece of writing their first time through. That's very, very rare. Even professional writers have revision built into their overall writing process. Um, Most people write a draft to get the ideas down, get the basic organization down, um, make sure that they have audience awareness, and then they go back and revise to make it more effective. And sometimes that knowledge of how to make it more effective comes from sharing it with other readers. Sometimes it just comes from reevaluating their writing using various tools, and some of those tools we'll cover in this module. The revision process for most people has more than one part. It's not just about starting with the draft and going from the beginning to the end and making small changes. Instead, revision talks about re-seeing the original piece of writing, the draft. How can you re-see it to make it more effective? Things like tone, style, word choice, those are small scale revisions. The first thing that you want to start with is large scale revisions so that you're first aware of, am I meeting the needs of the particular writing situation? In this case, that's an assignment. Are you writing a persuasive essay that is focused and organized, that has all the parts that are required for a complete essay? Does it include research as assigned? Is that research cited? Those are all large scale revisions that you're going to look at first. Then once you've checked and made sure all those are working, then you'll do small scale revision, which is more like proofreading, where you'll be looking at things like punctuation, grammar, making sure that your citations are 100%. Um, the revision process can be lengthy, so that's why it's important to look at your feedback from the instructor as soon as possible after you get it back, and then start a plan for revising and also do some time management so that you'll have plenty of time to actually do those revisions. The idea is to use the instructor feedback to make changes that are obvious in the final essay. I should be able to tell that you have applied revision tools to the final essay. All right, next is the required resources, and I'm going to switch to a split screen at this point. And I've made some notes in the announcement this week regarding some of the required resources. So I'm over on the right side now. First of all, there are e-textbook readings. Chapter 28 talks about going from the big picture and revising down to proofreading. That's what I just talked about kind of in general. This will give you some more specifics. And that's important to keep that as a focus, that you're going to look at big picture items, large scale items first, and then proofreading / editing will come last. When you've got everything else in place, then you'll do proofreading. The next chapter, chapter 31, is focused on style. What style should your essay use? And in this case, you'll be using middle style, and you can find out what that is and what it looks like in reading chapter 31. So that's important to do. Chapter 33 is about using inclusive language. That's not an option anymore. It's just assumed that you will use inclusive language. And what that means is that writers avoid expressions that reflect stereotypes, including stereotypes about gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, and religion. So he is no longer the default pronoun. There are ways to make sure that you're inclusive, so things like using they instead of he or she, using terms like male person, mail delivery person rather than mailman, Congress people rather than congressman. So be thinking about how that affects your essay. If people of a certain ethnic orientation are reading your essay, are they going to be offended because of your use of non-inclusive language? That's important to be thinking about your audience and also to be thinking about how your audience sees you as a writer. The next one is revising with peer feedback, and you had feedback when you did discussion in Module 4 on your thesis statement, key points, and your use of research. You will also be receiving some feedback this week in Module 6 on a paragraph that you choose to post in the discussion for receiving feedback. So, and then also you've had instructor feedback both on the thesis, key points, and research, as well as you will receive feedback on your entire draft. So be sure to read about how you use that feedback to make decisions about revision. Okay, the next one is the essay revision checklist. And this is a really helpful document. It goes through large-scale revisions and then ends with small-scale revisions. And notice the difference in the list. Large-scale revisions has a long list, and small-scale revisions has a short list. So that should tell you how much time and energy you should be spending on large-scale revisions as opposed to small-scale revisions. Then within each category, there are specifics, and they are the large-scale criteria: research, content, organization, focus, audience. And then within each of those categories, there are questions to help you assess your own work, and then check those off the list to make sure that you have done those things either as an assignment requirement or as an effective persuasive essay requirement. Next is, resources revising a persuasive essay. This is a long list of specific things that you need to take into consideration in your revision process. And again, it breaks it down into large scale and small scale. Each one of these is either, these are all links to pages. An important one to point out here is unity and coherence, connecting ideas with transitions. Part of what you want to do in revising is to be sure that your paragraphs move from idea to idea smoothly. So from topic sentence to research to concluding sentence, everything needs to move smoothly from one to the next. If it doesn't, the reader can get confused. Um, the Olympics are going on right now. Think of downhill skiers that they need to move smoothly. I'm not sure why that link didn't come up. They need to move smoothly from one turn to the next. That happens by their use of the poles with flags on them. That's the indication that they should change direction. You'll be using transition words or phrases to indicate to the reader, to the audience, that they need to, that you're changing ideas, changing from one type of focus in the paragraph, from a topic sentence to research, etc. Um, again, organization, focus. What I want you to do is to at least click on all of these in your initial pass through the resources so that you'll know what information is here to help you and where it can be found. Because until you get your draft back with my feedback, you may not know, what areas I need to work on. And so at least to get ahead of the game, you'll know where information to help you with those is located. So we've got everything like from thesis statements to responding to alternative views. That's one requirement of the assignment. Tips for evaluating your sources, because you still need to make sure that you are using the best sources, introductions, conclusions. And then finally, under small scale revisions, you have how to format papers in 7th edition APA. There's a video, 14-minute video, that shows you step by step in Word how you actually do that, which can be very helpful if you're not familiar with the different kinds of margins, etc. And then APA documentation guide. Again, we've had a link for that in almost every module. The expectation is that for the final essay, your APA citation will be 100% correct. So we've had several links that included explanations as well as examples. And finally, a link to grammar. The e-textbook has a section on things like grammar, how to have subject-verb agreement, making sure that you're not using grammar incorrectly. And then proofreading, which is the absolute final thing that you should do, links to things like capitalization. Spell checks are very handy, but not all words or word errors are corrected or identified in spell checkers. You have to be able to go through and check for yourself. Things like words that sound alike but are spelled differently, there and there. Know the difference between affect and effect. So use the spelling checkers as a tool, but ultimately it'll be your responsibility to have spelling correct. So again, those are helpful links. Then we have avoiding I and other personal pronouns. This isn't something that we've talked about at all up until this point in the course, but this is a really helpful and important video. We're doing academic writing, and in academic writing, you don't use the word I because you're being an objective writer, and the audience expects you to be objective. So everything that you state is from the point of view of an academic writer, academic researcher, rather than you personally. Your opinions personally don't really carry much weight in academic writing. So you need to be aware of what pronouns are personal pronouns besides I, how to replace those, as well as the importance of not using personal experience. Again, personal experiences don't carry much weight in academic writing. What you need to do instead is make those generic experiences. So that is a very helpful video, and it's relatively short. Okay, then we're ready to move on to the next thing, which is another right now assignment. And because we've done one of these previously, you should be familiar with how to do it. The main thing to remember is that you need to enter information in all sections, and that you need to have less than 4,000 words. So that should be pretty easy to do. And then finally, and let's see. Yeah, I do still want a split screen. Then finally, we will go to the discussion for Module 6. It's very important to always read all of the instructions, both for the initial post as well as the response post. I really like that in some revisions of this course, as they have changed things from previous versions, that they have made the instructions more concise, especially for the response post. So there are specific things that they need for you to provide in order to be achieving the purpose of this particular discussion, as well as to earn as many points as you can. So first of all, I need to point out a couple of things, and these are included in the announcement. Um, so I'll just double state them here. Number one says, compose your thesis statement in audience. For most people, compose means just write it down somewhere, you develop it. But what we need you to do is to actually put it in your initial post. So you need to state your thesis statement and your audience. Remember, your audience is not me. It's a particular group of people who would have interest or investment in your debatable issue. So it affects them somehow. So when it says compose, that means put it in your initial post. That way, the person's reading your initial post will know what your thesis statement is, as well as who your audience is. That's real important for them to do their response posts. Number two lists 2 challenges you faced when writing your first draft. This is really helpful to stop at this point and think about, well, where was I challenged? What was most difficult for me? And to um, think about it honestly and specifically. Try to give an example of something that you really struggled with. Maybe it was citation, maybe it was introduction paragraph. Because what's going to happen in your responses is that people are going to suggest some ways that you might be able to deal with those challenges in future writing situations. Then number 3, share one paragraph from your essay draft that you would like the most help with. Be sure to identify which essay paragraph you're including in that initial post. Is it an introduction paragraph, a conclusion paragraph, or a body paragraph? If it's a body paragraph, which body paragraph? First, second, or third, or opposing view body paragraph? It really helps the response post person to know how to respond if you tell them specifically what function that paragraph is supposed to be serving. You make that initial post as always by midnight Thursday. And then for the response posts, again, they are very specific. You're not just providing general feedback, you're providing specific feedback. Provide feedback or advice for your peers' identified writing challenges. Use details and examples from course resources and your instructor's feedback on previous assignments to support your advice. So again, not general advice, but helpful advice that's specific, that refers to maybe your own experience, how you solved that challenge, but be specific. Then number 2, as you craft your advice, consider answering one of the following or some of the following questions. What might help your peers overcome the challenges that they faced? And then B, share one piece of feedback for each peer about the paragraphs that your classmates shared and what might be improved based on their feedback requests. So think about, again, not general feedback on their paragraph that they've shared, but specific feedback. If it's a body paragraph, the topic sentence needs to be more focused by doing this. The topic sentence needs to echo the thesis statement claim by doing this. Give examples, rewrite the topic sentence for them so they have an exact specific example of what you're suggesting as an improvement. If it's an introduction, are you referring to the thesis? Are you looking at the background information that begins the introduction paragraph? Again, be specific and give them examples of exactly what you're talking about. All right, so that's everything. Well, let's see. Let's look at the guidelines and rubric real quickly. Because for the workshop discussions, they are different than they are for general I'm going to switch back to full screen, than they are for just regular general discussions. So it's important that you look at the grading rubric and make yourself aware of that. First of all, we have the things that you're required to have in your initial post, the thesis and the audience, your challenges that you shared, 2 challenges, and then the paragraph draft itself. So you have all those 3 things in your initial post. Then your feedback, and we'll look at the response or the criteria description in the meets expectation column. It says provides relevant feedback in response posts with clarifying explanation and detail. So nothing general, you're going to be specific and you're going to provide examples of what you mean. And then timeliness, make sure that you meet the deadlines, and then clear communication, that your initial post and response posts are organized and easy for the person reading them, which either is me or a classmate, easy for them to understand and to follow. All right, so then the last thing that we need to do is to look ahead at Module 7 and look at the guidelines, well, I'm sorry, the directions and what exactly is going to be happening in Module 7. You're going to be revising 2 things, um, 3-1, the collection of sources, and then the draft for the persuasive essay with research. What I'm suggesting is that you read through this now. This week, we're not quite as busy in terms of assignments due, so this gives you a pause and a place where you can go ahead and read the information that is provided for you on what's due in Module 7. So read everything, the overview, the directions, that there's 2 parts. You need to be aware now that there's 2 parts, what those 2 parts require you to do. And in both cases, you need to have evidence of revision. So they will not be what you turned in 3-1 or 5-2. They will be new and improved versions of both of those. So again, you'll want to read ahead and review those so that you know where you're going in Module 7. Because the assignment in Module 7 is worth 250 points, the highest number of points for any assignment in this course. It's a cumulative kind of assignment where it shows the progress you've made between the original time that you did these assignments, the collection of sources, and the persuasive essay. So this is showing that you have, in fact, worked hard to understand the concepts, the reasons why we do this kind of writing process in academic writing that's supported by research. So this is a good time to look ahead at that. And then next week, we'll actually have the assignment. And that's all I've got for this week.